कहानियाँ सिर्फ एंटरटेनमेंट या लर्निंग के लिए ही नहीं, बट एज अ थेराप्यूटिक टूल भी इस्तेमाल की जा सकती हैं। हेलो एवरीवन, आई एम शार्ली वासन and this podcast is just for you if you are a special needs educator, counselor, psychotherapist, teacher, storyteller, parent, or just about anyone who has got anything to do with children with special needs. On this show, I bring for you not only lots of interesting stories, but also ideas to use them as therapeutic tools, resources where to find such stories, and also the latest updates from the special needs realm. I also sit across some leading experts and educators who are doing phenomenal work in this field. So stay tuned with me and let's dive into today's episode. Don't despair for stories' future or turn marginally over the rise of video games or reality TV. For the way we experience story will evolve. But as storytelling animals, we will no more give it up than start walking on all fours, says eminent literature and evolution expert Jonathan Gatchell in his book, The Storytelling Animal, How Stories Make Us Human. So aptly put, isn't it? कहानियां तो हम इंसान हमेशा से ही कहते आए हैं और कहते रहेंगे, बस उनका रूप बदलता आया है, बदलता रहेगा। पर आपने कभी सोचा है दोस्तों, किसने सुनाई होगी दुनिया की सबसे पहली कहानी? सुनाई होगी, लिखी होगी, कैसे एक्सप्रेस की होगी वो कहानी उस पहले कहानीकार ने? Have you ever wondered who must have been the world's first ever storyteller? The first one to share that story, which their heart was so longing to share. Friends, in today's episode, let me take you on a walk through the history of storytelling, following the various forms and range of professional oral storytelling along our trail. And as always, we'll also share some extremely valuable resources and ideas for your parenting or work with children with special needs. But first, let's have a look at the history of storytelling. So the earliest stories were those told in the form of carvings on rocks and caves. And as it is believed that the world originated from Africa, that is, much of human evolution occurred in Africa, as the fossils of early humans come entirely from that continent. So, we can say that storytelling in the form of rock carvings also originated in Africa. कितना अद्भुत लगता है ना सोचकर कि वो जो इमेजेस हमारी हिस्ट्री बुक्स के चैप्टर्स के बीच बीच में दिखाई देती थी, तो वो थी दुनिया की सबसे पहली कहानियां। इनिशियली गुफाओं पे लकीरें खींच के अपनी भावनाएं, जिंदगी के अनुभव वगैरह बयान किए जाते थे। और चूंकि अफ्रीका में सबसे पहले इंसान के अवशेष पाए गए, तो हम ये कह सकते हैं कि सबसे पहला कहानीकार भी वहीं का था। एंड देन gradually, when humans started living in groups or tribes, that's when storytelling began to be done by word of mouth. These were usually tales told by those who used to go out in the day to hunt for food. Towards the evenings, they all used to gather and exchange and share their experiences, knowledge, all that they saw or learnt during the day. धीरे धीरे जब इंसान कबीलों में रहने लगे, तब अपने दिन भर के शिकार के और तरह तरह के अनुभव शाम को इकट्ठे होकर एक दूसरे को सुनाने लगे। These used to be stories of bravery. For instance, how I fought a dangerous beast today. Then there were stories of caution, as which part of the forest to go or which path never to tread. And there were stories of wonder, like what amazing trees or fruits I discovered today. ये कहानियां थी पराक्रम वाली, पता है आज मैं कैसे खतरनाक जानवर से भिड़ गया, या सावधान करने वाली, जैसे कि जंगल के किस हिस्से में जाना सेफ है, किस में नहीं, और अचंभित करने वाली कि आज मैंने क्या बढ़िया फलों वाले पेड़ ढूंढ निकाले, वगैरह वगैरह. And as this was an era when humans were still trying to make sense of the world around them, so to explain any concept they themselves didn't understand fully yet, they made up stories around it. That's why a lot of myths were created during this period. For example, popular African stories about thunder being a mom and lightning being its son, or the ones about trees that walk. और चूंकि ये वो समय था जब इंसान पूरी तरह से प्रकृति को, उसके कॉन्सेप्ट्स को समझ नहीं पाया था, जैसे कि बिजली क्यों कड़कती है या आंधी कैसे आती है, तो ऐसे जो भी कॉन्सेप्ट्स इंसान को क्लियरली समझ नहीं आते थे, वो उन्हें दूसरों को समझाने या बच्चों को सतर्क करने के लिए उन कॉन्सेप्ट्स के इर्द गिर्द कहानियां घड़ लेता था. ऐसी कहानियों को कल्पित कथाएं यानी मिथ्स कहा जाता है. ऐसी कई अफ्रीकन कल्पित कथाएं हैं जिनके मुताबिक गर्जन यानी थंडर जो है वो हजारों साल पहले एक मदर शीप थी, और ये जो बिजली है वो था उस शीप का गुस्सैल बिगड़ैल सा बछड़ा, और जब जब उस बछड़े को गुस्सा आता था वो लोगों के घर जला देता, कभी कभी तो फसलें उजाड़ देता या लोगों को मार डालता. और जब जब वो ऐसी तबाही पे उतर आता, मम्मा भेड़ उसे जोर की डांट लगाती, रुकने को कहती, पर बछड़ा जब गुस्से में होता तो वो माँ की एक न सुनता. और एक दिन सब लोगों ने मिलकर राजा से विनती की कि अब आप ही कुछ कीजिए, हमें इस बिजली कुमार के प्रकोप से बचाइए. और तब राजा ने मम्मा भेड़ को अपने गुस्सैल बेटे के साथ आसमान में चले जाने का हुक्म दिया, सजा सुनाई, और बस तब से मम्मा गर्जन बन गई और उसका बेटा बिजली जब भी ज्यादा कड़कता मम्मा गरज गरज के उसे डांट लगाती. है ना दिलचस्प तरीका अननोन को डिस्क्राइब करने का. Then gradually the variety of orally told stories all over the world started getting richer in themes as well as content. धीरे धीरे दुनिया भर में सुनाई जाने वाली कहानियों के विषय वस्तु और ज्यादा विविध होते गए. So now lots of fables, folk tales, fairy tales, ballads and legends had started coming up. Fables were short tales that usually featured animals. Now those could be real animals or mythical animals that were given human-like qualities to deliver a specific moral lesson. Great Greek storyteller Aesop had created a number of fables that are now collectively known as Aesop's fables. Fables you can find in every culture. यानी नीति कहानियां जिनमें जानवरों, पेड़ पौधों या कभी कभी निर्जीव चीजों को मानवीय गुण देकर उनके थ्रू उपदेशात्मक बातें कन्वे की जाती थीं. ग्रीक कहानीकार ईसप की कहानियों के अलावा हमारे अपने पंचतंत्र और हितोपदेश भी इसी कैटेगरी में आते हैं. There also emerged folk tales, which are stories passed down by the folk who told them. Just as there are folk in every country has its own folk tales. हिंदी में बोले तो लोक कथाएं यानी लोक या जन समुदाय में प्रचलित परंपरागत कहानियां. लोक कथाओं की भाषा, विचार और भाव आमतौर पे बिल्कुल सरल होते हैं और इनका सोर्स यूजुअली अननोन होता है. वैसे आपको नहीं लगता कि हर वो बात, हर वो बिलीफ जो हमें हमसे पहले वाली जनरेशंस ने हैंड डाउन किया है वो सब कुछ फोक टेल्स ही हैं? पहले इस टॉपिक को किसी और दिन डीपन करेंगे. सो रॉबिनहुड स्टोरीज, अली बाबा and 40 Thieves, Mullah Nazruddin stories, for instance, are all considered as folk tales. However, sometimes folklorists categorize these same tales also under legends. So legends were traditional stories, sometimes regarded as historical, but unauthenticated. इन्हें हिंदी में दंत कथा या आख्यान या पौराणिक कथा के नाम से जाना जाता है. इनमें सच्चाई हो भी सकती है और नहीं भी. Actually, there is often an overlap in the categories we would want to put any story belonging to folklore. Singhasan Battisi or Betal Pachisi, for instance, from one perspective can be seen as folk tales. From another lens, they look like legends. And from yet another angle, they appear to be fairy tales. Fairy tales, परी कथाएं, यानी वो काल्पनिक कहानियां जिनमें आमतौर पे परियां या चुड़ैलें मिलती हैं, जिनमें चमत्कार होता है या किसी शाप से या जादू से मुक्ति हो रही होती है. Fairy tales. These were stories of wonder, typically featuring entities such as dragons, elves, fairies, giants, goblins, mermaids, trolls, unicorns, witches, and mostly carrying elements of magic or enchantments. So Cinderella, Rapunzel, Snow White are all classic examples filled with all these magic elements. Here, let me briefly digress from the topic to mention an interesting fact here. So 19th century Soviet folklorist and structurist Vladimir Prop had given a theory based on his analysis of the basic structural elements of Russian folk tales. He had given 31 elements, which he calls functions, and he had concluded that after the initial situation of the tale is described or depicted, so any wonder tale is bound to have any combination of these 31 elements, like absentation, then interdiction, then violation of that interdiction, etc., etc. And each of these elements will appear in the folktale in a fixed consecutive order. Isn't it interesting? यानी कि व्लादिमीर प्रोप के मुताबिक ये जो फेरी टेल्स में ऐसे एलिमेंट्स मिल जाते हैं ना कि एब्सेंटेशन कोई ना कोई गायब हो जाएगा या खो जाएगा, फिर एक पाबंदी होगी या कोई नियम होगा जिसको तोड़ना एकदम मना होगा, और फिर थोड़ी देर में उस नियम का उल्लंघन जरूर पाया जाएगा उस स्टोरी में. सो ये सारे एलिमेंट्स, इन सभी एलिमेंट्स का एक कहानी में एग्जैक्टली एक सेट कॉन्जिक्यूटिव ऑर्डर होता है उनके मुताबिक, और कि इसके बाद ये होगा और उसके बाद ही ये होगा. और ये सारे एलिमेंट्स उन्होंने 31 एलिमेंट्स बताए हैं. इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, यू कैन रीड इट अप. और उन एलिमेंट्स को वो फंक्शंस कहते हैं, है ना मजेदार. Anyway, taking our journey further, so another interesting form of storytelling was ballads. These were poems or songs narrating a story of a particular community in short stanzas. Traditional ballads were typically of unknown authorship, having been transmitted verbally from one generation to the next as part of the folk culture. The Battle of Otterburn, for instance, is a classic Spanish ballad. It's an account of the Scottish victory at the Battle of Otterburn in 1388. Ballads मतलब गाथा गीत, जो किसी समुदाय का अलिखित इतिहास कहते हैं. ये ऐसी कहानियां हैं जो कहीं लिखी नहीं गईं, लेकिन परंपरागत रूप से सुनी और दोहराई जाती रही हैं. ओडिशा के 10 कथिया परफॉर्मेंसेस जैसे गीत गोविंद इसके सुंदर उदाहरण हैं. खैर, भारत की बात करें तो हम भारतीयों को तो कहानियां सुनाना हमेशा से ही पसंद रहा है. फिर चाहे वो केरल का विल्ले पाटे हो जिसे संगीत के साथ गा के सुनाया जाता है, या तमिलनाडु का बोमलट्टम जिसमें पपेट्स इस्तेमाल किए जाते हैं, या फिर महाराष्ट्र की चित्रकथा हो जो किसी न किसी तरह के विजुअल एड के साथ सुनाई जाती है, जैसे कि तस्वीरें या शैडो पपेट्री या लकड़ी की बनी कठपुतलियां. ट्रू, वेरी ट्रू. ये लकड़ी की बनी कठपुतली क्या होता है, मैं सिंपली कठपुतली भी कह सकती थी, नहीं? एनीवे, फिर एक स्टोरी टेलिंग फॉर्म है हरि कथा, जिसका ओरिजिन महाराष्ट्र बताया जाता है, पर ये कर्नाटक, आंध्र और तमिलनाडु में भी अच्छी खासी पनपी है. और क्या आप जानते हैं सबसे पहले हरि कथा वाचक या गायक कौन थे? अच्छा, एक हिंट देती हूँ. नारायण नारायण. पर हाँ, गेस करने के कोई पॉइंट्स नहीं मिलने वाले क्योंकि ये सुपर इजी पीजी था. Yes, the ever-traveling musician and storyteller Narad Muni was the first Harikatha singer. And by the way, Harikatha is also that same storytelling technique that Love and Kush had sung to narrate the story of their birth and childhood, as well as Sita's hardships as a single parent in front of their father, Lord Ram, at the Ashwamedh Mahamandap. We Indians have always loved performance storytelling and have had hundreds of traditional storytelling styles. Be it Ville Pate or Bomalattam, Chitrakatha, or be it the tradition of telling stories using kavad. Kavad is that small wooden box, a portable shrine you can say. So the Kavadiya community of Rajasthan uses kavad as a prop to perform storytelling. And interestingly, Japanese street theatre and storytelling form called kamishibai, which is a combination of picture and text to convey a story that became popular in the post-World War period in Japan, is so strikingly similar to this art form from Rajasthan. अच्छा, हम परफॉर्मेंस स्टोरी टेलिंग की बात करें और तीजन बाई को याद ना करें तो बात अधूरी लगती है ना. तो ये भी एक शैली है हिंदुस्तान के छत्तीसगढ़ की जिसका नाम है पांडवनी. तीजन बाई इज एन एक्सपोनेंट ऑफ पांडवनी, अ ट्रेडिशनल परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट form from Chhattisgarh, in which she enacts tales from the Mahabharata with musical accompaniments. Well, taking our journey further, so then somewhere around 3000 BC, the Bronze Age, when societies became irreversibly linked in their codependence on ores and metallurgical skills, which were unevenly distributed across geographies. This was the first epoch when civilizations began trading with each other, making roads and river networks, forging interpersonal relations and diplomatic alliances. So merchants would travel to faraway lands, and along with goods, they would bring back lots of stories. That explains how geographically far apart countries are often found to have very similar folk tales, like Russian folk tales re-emerged in our own backyard with cultural nuances of India, or the tales from the Panchatantra traveled to Central Asia, got reconstructed by adding some local flavor. फिर आया व्यापार का दौर. अब सौदागरों के सामान के साथ साथ कहानियां भी एक देश से दूसरे देश सफर करने लगी. इसीलिए तो एक दूसरे से इतनी दूर स्थित होने पर भी रूस की लोक कथाओं की हम शक्ल लोक कथाएं हमारे अपने देश में देसी तड़के के साथ सुनने को मिल जाती हैं, और पंचतंत्र की कहानियां थोड़ा बहुत रूप बदल के कहीं मध्य एशिया के देशों में सुनाई पड़ जाती हैं. But from then to now, the range of storytelling has become pretty vast, and the work that storytellers do has evolved immensely. Storytelling has now turned into a much more organized field and something more commercial too, while also far less localized and farther reaching than ever before. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, when platforms like Microsoft Teams, Zoom and Google Meet connected people across the globe, now storytelling performances do not know any geographical boundaries. सचमुच आज अगर हम मुड़ के देखें तो एहसास होता है कि कितना लंबा और खूबसूरत सफर तय किया है कहानी वाचन की इस कला ने. ऐसा कहा जा सकता है कि अब ये पहले से कहीं ज्यादा ऑर्गेनाइज्ड और कॉमर्शियल फील्ड हो गया है, और कोविड-19 के बाद से तो दुनिया सिमट के इतनी छोटी हो गई है कि कहानियां सुनाने और सुनने वालों के लिए अलग अलग शहरों, अलग अलग देशों या अलग अलग टाइम जोन्स में होने का भी कोई मायना नहीं रह गया है. धन्य हो जूम देवता. एंड दिस facelifting of the art form of storytelling actually started with the global storytelling revival that began in the late 1960s, with people all over the world starting to explore their cultural heritages. Around this time, people started identifying the sameness of themes and stories across the globe. After some time, India too joined the movement with its own personal version of the revival, bringing together the country's long-lost forms of storytelling or such forms of storytelling which were becoming extinct and bringing them together with some new uses of storytelling. Brought on by this kind of revival is also the revival of an exciting phenomenon called professional storytelling. So stories are no longer just something children listen to on those lazy afternoons at grandma's house. तो हुआ यूं कि 1960 के अंत में दुनिया भर में अपनी सांस्कृतिक धरोहरों की तरफ वापस मुड़ने का जैसे एक दौर शुरू हो गया और इसी के फलस्वरूप कहानी वाचन की कला का भी रिवाइवल हुआ और भारत भी अपने अनोखे अंदाज में इस आंदोलन से जुड़ गया। तो हमने जिन अलग अलग कहानी वाचन शैलियों के बारे में अभी चर्चा की थी, उन पुरानी शैलियों को वापस लाकर कहानी वाचन के नित नए उपयोग इजाद किए जाने लगे। And efforts made by the government, NGOs, storytelling institutes, storytellers as groups, and private individual players have all helped revive and transform the face of professional oral storytelling in the country. और इस तरह इतने सालों में सरकार द्वारा एनजीओ, कहानी वाचकों के ग्रुप्स और संस्थानों और एकल कहानी वाचकों के द्वारा किए गए प्रयासों से इस कला को पुनर्जीवन मिला है और इसका रूपांतरण होता आया है। वैसे NEP 2020 भी कहानियों पर आधारित शिक्षा पर जोर देती है और अपने मासिक रेडियो प्रोग्राम मन की बात के 69वें एपिसोड में प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने कहानी वाचन की इस कला पर चर्चा करते हुए कहा था, कहानियां मनुष्य के व्यक्तित्व के रचनात्मक और भावनात्मक पहलुओं को उभारती हैं। By the way, friends, the National Education Policy 2020 also envisages experiential learning including arts integrated and storytelling based pedagogy. And PM Narendra Modi, while addressing the 69th edition of his monthly radio program Man Ki Baat, also spoke about this art of storytelling. He had said, stories bring out the creative and emotional aspect of a human being. Anyway, as a result of all this revival and the efforts from so many directions, contemporary forms and ranges of professional oral storytelling in our country has taken very interesting shapes. So now there is storytelling with movement. That is when a storyteller involves movement in his or her storytelling. This allows children to physically participate in the story. Then there are read alouds. The almost lost tradition of reading aloud and sharing stories with each other is being revived by many storytellers around the globe, both for kids and adults. By the way, reading aloud is believed to create everlasting bonds between parents or grandparents and children. तो जब चारों दिशाओं से कहानी वाचन कला के रिवाइवल और रूपांतरण के प्रयास इतनी शिद्दत से होते चले गए, तो बड़ी दिलचस्प शैलियां प्रचलित होती गई, जैसे किताब से पढ़ के कहानी सुनाना, आवाज या वीडियो रिकॉर्ड करके सुनाना, कठपुतली या चित्रों के संग कहानी सुनाना, कंपनियों या स्कूलों के लिए कहानी सुनाना, रेडियो पर कहानी सुनाना, स्टेज पर माइक लेकर स्टैंड अप स्टोरी टेलिंग करना, पॉडकास्ट होस्ट करके कहानियां सुनाना वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. Then there are audio or video recorded stories. This way of listening to stories helps children develop auditory skills, increase their attention span, and helps develop their imagination as they draw mental images while listening. Then there is storytelling with accessories or hand puppets or picture cues. These are multisensorial stories where picture, usually large cutouts of characters from the story that you are telling, can either be hung on a wall behind you or taken out of a box while telling the story as and when they are mentioned in the narration. And at the mention of hand puppets, names like Kamini Kaushal and Meena Nayak come to mind, as if automatically. Kamini Kaushal, a radio star turned Bollywood actress, later turned into a popular kids storyteller on Doordarshan and also a prize-winning toy maker. And Meena Nayak also used puppetry at first on TV and later to connect with children in educational as well as post-trauma settings. She later became HOD of the puppetry department at University of Mumbai. Then there's storytelling for organizations. So now storytelling is no longer just about entertaining children. It is now used in different contexts to teach or train grown-ups too. For example, corporate storytelling. बहुत सिखा लिया इन बड़ों ने हम बच्चों को कहानियों के माध्यम से. अब बड़ों की कहानियां सुन के सीखने की बारी आई है. Then there's also storytelling on radio shows. This style dates back to the 90s when every weekend Diamond Comics used to give little listeners a pre-listen of their newly published comic. And the storyteller used to leave the listeners curious to know what happened next in the story. But for that, you had to go buy that comic. And for that, you had to ask your elders for pocket money. But I'll save that sob story for another day. So, radio storytelling style made a comeback with Yadon Ka Idiot Box, hosted by Nilesh Misra, in the year 2011. याद है वो रेडियो पर सुनाई जाने वाली अधूरी कहानियां जिनमें डायमंड कॉमिक्स के लेटेस्ट इशू की एक झलक सुना के हम बच्चों को तड़पता हुआ छोड़ दिया जाता था कि जाओ पहले माता पिता से जेब खर्च लेके आओ. रेडियो पर कहानियां सुनाने का वो रिवाज 2011 में वापस लेकर आए नीलेश मिश्र. Then nowadays there are many storytellers who are doing very well as open mic or stand-up storytellers. In very interesting ways, they either joke about families or relationships in their anecdotes or touch their audience's sentiments through their telling. And then there are podcasts where some really interesting storytelling shows are available. और एक नया स्टाइल काफी चल रहा है आजकल ओपन माइक या स्टैंड अप कहानी वाचन का. इसमें ज्यादातर थीम्स ली जाती हैं जैसे परिवार या रिश्तेदारों के बारे में मजाक करके ऑडियंस को गुदगुदाना या फिर उन्हें पर्सनल ह्यूमन टच वाली कोई कहानी सुना के भावुक कर देना. बाकी आप तो हैं ही मेरे फेवरेट स्टोरी टेलर्स जो दिन रात नए नए अंदाज की कहानियां बुनते सुनते और सुनाते रहते हैं. याद है ना? Each one of you is a storyteller. कभी भूलिएगा नहीं.
Now let's get to anything for you, baby. In this segment of the show, you get the latest updates and insights from the special needs world and answers to all your queries related to any help or guidance to special needs. Just about anything for you. From our podcast host, Sharlie Wason.
Friends, today we have brought to you some more updates. The first inspiring update is that every Monday, when our country's oldest museum, that is Kolkata's Indian Museum, is closed for visitors, special workshops for children and young adults with autism are held inside the museum premises. In these workshops, called Soulful Silence Mondays, these kids on the autism spectrum sketch and paint using their unique visual perception and imagination. They have also shown remarkable increment in their attention span, and many of them also hold exhibitions of their own paintings. The second exciting update is that Guwahati-based NGO Shishu Sarothi offers a scholarship program for children and youngsters with special needs hailing from anywhere in India. A total of 180 students with disabilities may avail the benefits of this scholarship program to pursue any academic courses from higher secondary to post-graduation level. or vocational or skill building courses, or even preparatory coaching for various government jobs. And the last date for applying for the academic session 2022-23 is 30th of September, that is 30th of this month. For more details, please check out Shishu Sarothi's official website. And today's last update is that a dedicated Autism Center of Excellence has been recently inaugurated within the SRM Medical College Hospital and Research Center in Tamil Nadu's Kanchipuram. This Autism Center is not only first of its kind to be opened within an Indian medical college hospital, but also it has a unique sensory garden with multimodal sensory inputs outside in an open area. Apart from this, there are also occupational therapy, speech therapy, special educational support, handwriting intervention, play-based therapy, behavior modification, social skills training, ADL training, as well as psychotherapy at the facility.
Enter the world of therapeutic stories in our segment of To Huaa, where storyteller and edupreneur Sharlie Wason brings to you snippets of actual case study-based therapeutic stories, and also how after intervention using that particular custom-made story, the specific needs were catered to.
This story was originally a Spanish tale, a story that has been retold or adapted by special educator and storyteller Sharlie Wason. That's me. Keeping in mind the personalities, likes, dislikes, fears, anxieties, difficulties of the children and young adults I came across at a residential school for learners with special needs in India's National Capital Region. So, for instance, there was this one 6-year-old child in this special school who had a delayed speech. So much so, he didn't yet speak any meaningful words or phrases. But I noticed that this particular child had such extraordinary visual memory that after completing all his classwork and solving all math problems in a jiffy, he would just immerse himself into writing in his notebook the names of various Bollywood movies that he had ever watched. This was his regular drill in every single class. And not only movie names, this bright little fellow even remembered every single aspect of the logo of Sanjay Leela Bhansali's production company and used to draw that logo in his notebook with such precision. You got to see to believe what I'm talking about here. With each minute detail, he would draw that logo. And most interesting part was he knew very well that we teachers loved and were awestruck by this skill of his. So he always made sure to seek our attention, either by grabbing our hand or pointing towards his notebook while silently gazing at us, pointing where these movie names or logos were drawn so precisely. Then there were kids whose auditory perception this special school was working upon. Then there were a few whose self-awareness or sense of their own body in space was not yet fully aligned. So they would bump into people and things quite often. And then some common needs of this group of children in general were such as struggling to make friends with others or to express that they wanted to play or interact with other children. They had lots of anxieties during social situations. Like whenever they were taken out of the school premises for their sports or physical education to a nearby public playground, most of them used to be anxious because of the other children and adults present in that playground. And some of them even used to become irritable due to these social difficulties. And some of them had difficulty while playing team games, where the teachers wanted them to learn to be a bit more caring for one another. So, in short, these were a few observations we had of this group of kids. And with an intent not to heal or to teach nor correct any of those aspects, rather with an intent to celebrate each of these children along with their unique skill sets. We have brought in features and skills that we had observed in each of these children and have weaved them into this tale from Spain for creating a therapeutic storytelling experience. So originally, it was a story about an octopus who was very, very shy. He nearly always went about on his own because although he wanted to have lots of friends, he was too self-conscious because of his 8 long, wiggly arms. And everyone used to make fun of him. They used to think he was awkward and odd. One day, the octopus was trying to catch a very slippery oyster, but before he knew it, he had tied himself into one massive knot, and he just couldn't move after that. He tried with all his strength to wriggle free of the tangle, but it was no good. And he continued trying hard for a long, long time as he felt great embarrassment at being seen in such a tangle. But at last he decided to ask for help from the passing fish. Despite feeling embarrassed, he asked for help. But many fish swam past, ignoring him. Anyhow, finally, one very kind little fish offered to help to untie all those tentacles from all those suckers. However, our octopus was so shy, he couldn't muster up courage to speak to that fish or ask that fish to be his friend, and later was regretting this inaction on his part. Anyway, life went on, and a few days or maybe months later, it so happened that the same little fish who had helped our octopus, now she herself was in a big trouble. But the problem was so dangerous that no one dared to go near to help this little kind fish. But the octopus, who felt indebted by this little fish's kindness, jumps straight into the situation to help the fish. And in this way, he finally wins a friend for a lifetime and also becomes a hero of other sea creatures. So that's how the original tale goes. Now, in our version of the story, we have given this octopus a fun, super long name. We have used this fun and super long name as a satisfying auditory input for listeners with auditory perception difficulties. It may also be very satisfying for listeners with visual challenges for that matter. By the way, this super long fun name has always been a hit with our listeners, be it children or adults with or without special needs. We have used the same name for various characters in quite a few therapeutic tales created by Huaa, as well as in many of our storytelling performances. And it has always been loved by everybody. And in our adaptation, apart from the octopus's awkward, wiggly 8 arms, we also added that he used to feel conscious because of this uncommon, super long name of his. So, as a teacher or teller, you may like to offer the task of reminding you the name of the octopus to the group in general, or the children who have oral stimulation needs. You could try saying, "Oh, I'm so forgetful, so will you please keep reminding me of the octopus's name whenever I stop to ask you during my narration of the story?" Then, in our version of the story, we have turned the friendly, kind fish into Basanti's character from the blockbuster Hindi movie Sharlie. So our fish is a female, loves traveling and meeting new people, making friends. She's very talkative, helpful, kind, and very funny too. Needless to say that apart from all other kids, the movie buff kid of this group is gonna love this part. He's gonna feel connected and is gonna feel that he and his hobbies or what he so loves doing, that it is all heard and seen and acknowledged by us adults through this story. Then, in our version of the story, by showing how Basanti forgets because of too much talking what Mausi had asked her to fetch, we have demonstrated how each one is right in his or her own way. The one who talks too much also forgets to fulfill some of her duties, and the one who gets tongue-tied can also be such a responsible friend. Then, for the scene where the octopus actually finds courage to do something big, huge, mighty sea creatures didn't dare attempt, we have shown in detail the internal dialogue going on in the mind of the octopus. In first person, using such words as this kind of internal dialogue usually happens inside any human being. And in this way, time and again in the story, we keep affirming the rightness, the wholeness, the integrity of each of these children, regardless of their abilities. So feeling awkward because of his gait or his body, being bullied for his odd name, not knowing the right words to make friends, and still winning every heart in the end without trying hard, by just being your true self. In this way, we are mirroring the actual life experiences of our listeners, but at the same time, giving an alternative scenario to their painful experiences, that there are people who are happy to have him in their life. He or she can actually make friends or even be their hero. Although this is just a snippet of the story, I hope you got a glimpse of how, through our therapeutic version of this Spanish tale, we have tried to enter the very world of these children with special needs and have tried telling our story from inside their world, rather than trying to change them or make them someone else. Well, when you read or listen to the whole, complete version of our adaptation of the story, you'll find out and understand more how this story enhances self-love in its listeners or provides them the sensory inputs their senses may be seeking. But in the meantime, just ponder on this one thought, that to feel seen or feel visible is such a basic human need that longs to be met inside each one of us. And individuals with special needs are quite often missing this kind of an experience. And with this therapeutic tale, if nothing else, at least we can achieve this. We can make each child feel seen, feel visible.
That was just a snippet of what a custom-made therapeutic story could do. For more such stories, contact at tohuayon@gmail.com. Details given in show notes.
आज इस एपिसोड पर मेरे साथ बने रहने के लिए आप सभी का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। हमें ईमेल करके जरूर बताइएगा कि आज का एपिसोड आपको कैसा लगा। Our email ID is tohuayon@gmail.com. You can know more about our work with schools and therapy centers or our workshops and training programs from the show notes. Feel free to drop us an email for any special needs guidance, and do remember to join me in the next episode of To Huaa Yon. This is your host Sharlie Wason signing off.